The name at the top of the chat wasn't a lover's, it was her brother's boss. She realized the mistake at 2:17 a.m., tried to delete it, failed. He didn't reply, he didn't call, and by morning, he was obsessed. Hey family, before this story begins, I want you to do something real quick. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Your comments fuel these stories. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The phone slipped from Sharon Peterson's fingers and hit the floor with a sharp sound that felt too loud for the quiet apartment. Her heart slammed violently against her chest. No, 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 she whispered, dropping to her knees. Her hands shook as she picked the phone back up, her eyes locked on the screen, praying, desperately, that what she'd seen seconds ago wasn't real. Delivered, read. Her throat closed. At the top of the chat sat a name that did not belong there. A name she had never saved, never intended to see, never wanted connected to her body in any way. George Kim, her brother's boss, the man who controlled Mark's job, his income, his future. Sharon's stomach twisted painfully as panic spread through her. The photos hadn't been meant for him. They weren't meant for anyone important. Just a late-night distraction. Someone harmless. Someone temporary. Not this. Never this. She pressed her palm to her mouth as nausea crept up her throat. Her skin burned, like she'd been caught doing something wrong in front of the entire world. "Oh my God," she breathed. "I didn't mean to." Her mind raced backward. Earlier that evening, Mark had been frantic, tearing through the apartment looking for his phone. He'd borrowed hers in a rush, apologizing as he typed out a quick message to his boss. She'd barely paid attention, scrolling through social media, half listening as he thanked her and rushed out again. She hadn't deleted the chat. One mistake, one exhausted second. And now, everything felt like it was collapsing. Her phone buzzed lightly in her hand. Sharon froze. Her pulse roared in her ears as she stared at the screen, afraid to breathe. Slowly, she lifted the phone, bracing herself for anger, threats, or humiliation. Nothing. No reply, no typing bubble, just silence. That was worse. Sharon pushed herself up and paced her room, rubbing her arms like she was cold even though the night was warm. She replayed every possible outcome in her head. What if he told Mark? What if he fired him? What if he showed the photos to someone else? George Kim wasn't just anyone. He was powerful, controlled, untouchable. The kind of man people didn't cross. She sat heavily on the edge of her bed, staring at the phone until the screen dimmed. Her chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing down on her. Across the city, George Kim stood perfectly still in the darkened living room of his penthouse, his phone resting in his hand. He hadn't moved in minutes. He had read the message once, then again, and again. Not because he didn't understand what he was seeing, but because his body had reacted before his mind could catch up. George inhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. This was a mistake. It had to be. Sharon Peterson, his employee's sister, a woman he had never thought about, never noticed beyond passing mentions. Mark spoke about her often enough. Complaints, protectiveness, jokes about her stubborn streak. George had never cared, until now. He locked the phone and set it down on the table, like it burned his skin. "This doesn't happen," he said quietly to the empty room. Men like him didn't lose control. They didn't blur lines. They didn't want what they couldn't have. He poured himself a glass of water, drinking it slowly, deliberately. But the image returned instantly when he closed his eyes, clear, unwanted, impossible to forget. His grip tightened. Across town, Sharon lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every sound magnified. She could hear Mark moving in his room, getting ready for bed, unaware that her entire world had tilted. She squeezed her eyes shut, guilt twisting painfully in her chest. Her phone buzzed again. Her heart jumped into her throat. Still nothing. She didn't sleep. Morning came too fast. Mark burst into her room just after 6, already dressed for work, his energy filling the space. "Sharon, you up?" he asked, cheerful. She sat up quickly. Yeah. "You won't believe this," he said, grinning. "I got an email from HR." Her stomach dropped. "An email?" "I'm getting a raise," he said, laughing in disbelief. "A big one. Didn't even apply for it." Her breath caught. "A raise?" "Yeah. Guess my boss finally noticed me," Mark said, grabbing his jacket. "Crazy, right?" Sharon forced a smile as her heart sank. She knew exactly who had noticed him. After he left, the apartment felt too quiet. Her phone vibrated on the bed beside her. She stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. One message. "Good morning, Sharon." Her fingers trembled. Another followed immediately. "We need to talk. Today." Her chest tightened as fear and something else tangled together in her stomach. This wasn't ending. This was beginning. And by morning, he was obsessed. Sharon stared at the message for so long the screen dimmed. "We need to talk. Today." No greeting, no explanation. Just a decision. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then pulled back. Whatever response she imagined felt wrong. Apologizing felt humiliating. Pretending nothing happened felt stupid. Asking why felt pointless. She already knew. She locked the phone and pressed it to her chest, breathing shallowly. This was real now. She showered mechanically, dressed without caring what she wore, and sat on the edge of the bed trying to steady the tight knot in her stomach. Every few seconds her mind jumped to Mark, laughing over his raise, proud, unsuspecting. The guilt clawed at her. Her phone rang. She flinched. Minhee's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," Sharon answered, forcing lightness into her voice. "Are you okay?" Minhee asked immediately. "You sound off." "I'm fine," Sharon said too quickly. "Just tired." There was a pause. "That's not a tired voice." Sharon swallowed. "Can we talk later?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Yeah," Minhee said slowly. "But you're hiding something." Sharon closed her eyes. "I know." Before Minhee could press further, Sharon ended the call. She couldn't say it out loud yet. Saying it would make it real in a way she wasn't ready for. Her phone buzzed again. An address. No explanation. Just a location she recognized immediately. George Kim's office building. Her pulse spiked. She typed back before she could overthink it. "I didn't mean to send them. It was a mistake." The reply came almost instantly. "I know." Her breath caught. "Then why do we need to talk?" She typed, her fingers shaking. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Because pretending it didn't happen would be dishonest. Her throat tightened. "I don't want my brother involved," she sent quickly. "He doesn't know." There was a longer pause this time. Then, "Neither does anyone else." That wasn't reassurance. That was control. Sharon stood outside the building an hour later, staring up at the sleek glass facade, her reflection faint and distorted. She felt exposed walking through the lobby, like everyone could see the mistake clinging to her skin. The elevator ride was silent and suffocating. When the doors opened, a woman in a tailored suit gestured her forward without a word. "Mr. Kim is expecting you." Of course he was. George stood by the window when Sharon entered his office, his back to her, city spread out beneath him. He didn't turn immediately. "Close the door," he said calmly. Her hand trembled as she did. The click echoed too loudly. Only then did he face her. Up close he was worse. Not angry, not smiling, just composed. "Sit," he said. She remained standing. I just want to explain, Sharon blurted. I wasn't thinking. I thought I was sending them to someone else. I said sit, he repeated, still calm. Her body obeyed before her mind caught up. The silence stretched between them, thick and charged. I know it was a mistake, George said finally. I also know you haven't slept. Her eyes snapped up. How? You look like someone who's been waiting for consequences, he said evenly. And you shouldn't. She frowned. I shouldn't. No, he replied. Because this isn't punishment. Her pulse thudded. Then what is it? George stepped closer, stopping just short of invading her space. Honesty, he said quietly. Her breath hitched. I should never have seen you like that, he continued. You should never have sent it. Both of those things are true. She nodded quickly. Exactly. So we forget it. We don't, he said. The word landed heavy. Sharon stood abruptly. This is inappropriate. I'm leaving. He didn't move to stop her, but his next words did. If you walk out now, he said, you'll spend the rest of the day wondering whether I'll bring this up to your brother. She froze. George tilted his head slightly. I won't. But you'll wonder. Her hands curled into fists. That's not fair, she whispered. No, he agreed. It isn't. She turned back to face him, anger and fear warring inside her. Then what do you want from me? George studied her for a long moment. I want you to understand something, he said slowly. I didn't ask for this. I tried to shut it down. She laughed bitterly. By texting me to come here. By not responding all night, he said. By telling myself it would pass. And did it? She asked softly. His jaw tightened. No. The admission sent a shiver through her. I don't plan to touch you, he said. I don't plan to force anything. But I won't pretend I'm unaffected. She shook her head. This is wrong. Yes, he said without hesitation. It is. Silence pressed in again. Her phone buzzed in her bag. Mark. She ignored it. George noticed. He got the raise this morning, Sharon said quietly, unable to stop herself. That was you. He didn't deny it. I take care of my people, he said. I didn't ask you to, she snapped. I know. The calmness in his voice unnerved her more than anger would have. Then stop, she said. Stop this. George stepped back, giving her space. I will, he said, if you want me to. Her chest tightened painfully. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The silence stretched again, heavier now. Her phone buzzed again. She stood there, torn between fear and something dangerously close to want. And if you're feeling this tension right now, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Stories like this only get darker from here. George's voice dropped lower. Say the word, he said, and I walk away. Her heart pounded. She didn't say it. Sharon didn't say the word. She stood there, heart racing, lungs tight, staring at George Kim like the room had narrowed to just the two of them. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was charged, humming, dangerous. George watched her closely. Her refusal wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was an answer. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He exhaled once, slow and controlled, like a man steadying himself before, stepping into deep water. Then we need rules, he said. Sharon blinked. Rules? Yes. His voice was calm, but there was an edge now. Because if we continue pretending nothing is happening, it will get out of control. Her laugh was shaky. You think this is controlled? He didn't smile. It can be. She crossed her arms, more to hold herself together than to be defensive. This is my brother you're talking about. My home, my life. And I'm not ignoring that, George said, which is why this conversation is happening. She took a step back, increasing the space between them. This shouldn't happen at all. And yet, he said quietly, here you are. The words sent a ripple through her. She hated that he was right. I didn't come here to start something, Sharon said. I came here to end it. George nodded once. Then listen carefully. She swallowed. This stays between us, he said. No messages, no late-night calls, no careless mistakes. Her stomach clenched at the word mistakes. And, he continued, you don't come to my office again unless I ask. Her brows pulled together. That sounds less like boundaries and more like control. His eyes darkened slightly. Those are the same thing when people don't trust themselves. The honesty of it caught her off guard. I won't use your brother against you, George added. Ever. His raise has nothing to do with you. She shook her head. That's not true. It is, he said firmly. I noticed his work long before last night. What happened between us doesn't change that. Between us. The phrase sat heavy in the air. Sharon took a steadying breath. And what if I can't just forget this? His gaze softened just a fraction. Then neither can I. The admission was quiet, intimate. It settled into her chest and stayed there. She glanced away first. I should go, she said. George stepped aside, clearing a path to the door without touching her. Go, he said. We're done for today. For today. The elevator ride down felt unreal. Sharon stared at her reflection in the mirrored walls, her cheeks flushed, her eyes too bright. She didn't recognize herself. By the time she got home, her phone was buzzing non-stop. Min-hee. She answered before she could lose her nerve. Where have you been? Min-hee demanded. You disappeared. I was out, Sharon said. Out where? Sharon closed the door behind her and leaned against it. I can't tell you yet. Min-hee went quiet. That was worse than yelling. Is this about a man? Min-hee asked slowly. Sharon closed her eyes. Yes. Is he married? No. Is he dangerous? Sharon hesitated. Yes. Min-hee exhaled sharply. That's not a hesitation you should have. I know, Sharon whispered. I know. Then, stop, Min-hee said. Whatever this is, stop it now. I don't know how, Sharon admitted. The truth tasted bitter. That night, Sharon lay awake again. But this time the fear was tangled with something else. Anticipation, awareness. Her phone stayed silent, but her body didn't forget. Across the city, George sat alone in his penthouse, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up. He replayed the look on Sharon's face when she hadn't told him to walk away. He hated how much that silence had affected him. He hated more that he wanted to hear it again. The next few days passed in a strange, taut calm. Mark came home happier than Sharon had seen him in months, talking about projects, about respect at work, about how things were finally turning around. Sharon listened, smiled, nodded, all while carrying the weight of what she wasn't saying. George didn't contact her. That was almost unbearable. By the fourth day, Sharon was standing in the kitchen when her phone vibrated. Her heart jumped before she even saw the screen. Unknown emotion tightened her chest when she read the message. Are you alone? She stared at it, pulse racing. Yes, she typed back before she could stop herself. The reply came immediately. Come downstairs. Her breath caught. Why? She typed. A pause. Then, because I'm losing control. Her fingers trembled. She grabbed her jacket and slipped out of the apartment, heart pounding as she descended the stairs. The black car was already waiting, engine running. The door opened. George didn't look at her when she got in. He just spoke, voice low. This doesn't leave the car, he said. She nodded, barely breathing. He turned to her then, really looked at her, his restraint visibly thinning. "You should hate me," he said. "I don't," she replied honestly. That was the moment something broke. He didn't touch her, but the space between them vanished. And if your heart is racing right now, make sure you like this video and subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next. Because from here on out there would be no pretending, only consequences. The car didn't move. George's hands stayed on the steering wheel, knuckles tight, jaw set like he was holding himself back from something irreversible. Sharon sat rigid in the passenger seat, her pulse racing so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "This is a bad idea," she said softly. "Yes," he replied without hesitation. That honesty made it worse. The city lights flickered across his face as he finally turned to her. Up close, the control he wore so easily was cracking. Not shattered, but strained. "I meant what I said," George continued. "I'm not touching you." Her breath caught. "Then why am I here?" "Because if I didn't see you," he said quietly, "I would have gone to your apartment." Her stomach dropped. "And that," he added, "would have been unforgivable." Silence filled the car again. Not empty. Loaded. Sharon swallowed. "You can still leave." He shook his head once. "So can you." She didn't open the door. Neither did he. The tension pressed in, thick and intoxicating. Every inch of space between them felt charged, alive. "Say something," Sharon whispered, unable to stand it. George laughed softly, not amused but edged. "Careful what you ask for." She turned fully toward him. "Why me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. George studied her, his gaze lingering too long to be safe. "I don't have a good answer," he admitted, "and that's what bothers me." Her chest tightened. "I'm not special. You are to me," he said simply. The words landed heavy, intimate, dangerous. Sharon shook her head. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied. "You stayed." Her heart skipped. "I should go," she said, even as her body leaned subtly toward him. "Yes," he said again. Neither moved. The air felt thin. Sharon's thoughts scattered, replaced by awareness of his proximity, his voice, the way his restraint felt like a living thing between them. George lifted one hand slowly, deliberately, stopping inches from her face. He didn't touch her. "If I cross this line," he said, voice low, "there's no pretending afterward." Her throat went dry. "I know. You'll live with your brother every day," he continued. "You'll look him in the eye." Her breath trembled. "I already do." That did it. George's hand dropped to his side, his restraint visibly snapping, not into violence, but into resolve. "Get out of the car," he said suddenly. Her heart lurched. "What? Now?" he said firmly. For a split second, disappointment stabbed her. Then she realized he was getting out too. They stood on the quiet street, the city humming around them, too close, too exposed. George faced her, his presence overwhelming without even trying. "This is where we stop," he said. Sharon laughed weakly. "You don't sound convinced." "I'm not," he admitted, "but stopping here is the last clean option." "Clean," she repeated bitterly. "That ship sailed days ago." George's gaze flicked to her lips before he could stop himself. The silence stretched, fragile and electric. "You don't belong in my world," he said. "And you don't belong in mine," she replied. They stared at each other, the truth undeniable. "I won't chase you," George said finally. "If you walk away tonight, I won't follow." Her heart pounded. "Tomorrow," he added, "you won't hear from me." The offer hung between them. Sharon took a step back, then another. Her chest ached. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to save herself, to save her brother, to undo everything. She turned, took 2 steps, stopped. George didn't move. Didn't call her back. That was the worst part. She turned slowly, meeting his eyes again. "You said you wouldn't force anything." "I won't," he said. "Then don't make me choose alone," she whispered. Something shifted in his expression. Not triumph, not relief, responsibility. George stepped forward, carefully, deliberately, closing the distance until they stood inches apart. "This choice," he said quietly, "will change things." Sharon nodded. "I know." He lifted his hand again, this time resting it lightly against her wrist. The contact was minimal, but it sent a jolt through her entire body. "If you pull away," he said, "I'll let you." She didn't pull away. The moment stretched, suspended. His thumb brushed once, barely there, like a question. Her breath hitched, and somewhere across the city, Mark slept peacefully, unaware that his sister was standing on the edge of something she couldn't step back from. George dropped his hand abruptly. "That's enough," he said, voice rougher now. "Not here." She stared at him, confused and breathless. "I won't take you like this," he continued, in the open, rushed, guilty. Her heart thudded. "Then how?" His gaze held hers, dark and intent. "On my terms," he said, "and only if you still want it tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word echoed. He stepped back, creating space, forcing air back into the moment. "Go home," he said. "Think." She nodded, shaky, and turned away before she could change her mind again. As she walked back toward the building, her phone buzzed. Min-hee. She ignored it. If you're still here, still listening, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Because what happens after tonight isn't restraint anymore. It's decision. Up in his apartment, George stood by the window again, watching the city, his reflection tense and unreadable. He had given her an exit. He didn't believe she would take it. And that realization scared him more than anything else. Sharon didn't sleep. She lay on her side, staring at the wall, the quiet hum of the apartment pressing in on her. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt it again. The brush of George's thumb against her wrist. The way her body had leaned toward him without permission. "On my terms." The words replayed like a challenge. In the morning, Mark was in an unusually good mood. He hummed as he poured coffee, talked about a meeting he was excited for, joked about finally being taken seriously at work. "You should see the new project they put me on," he said, grinning. "It's like, I don't know, things just shifted." Sharon smiled when she was supposed to, laughed when he laughed. Inside, guilt gnawed at her. She watched her brother move around the kitchen, completely unaware. And for a moment, she almost told herself she could still stop this. That she could ignore the pull, let time dull it. Her phone buzzed. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Mark was still talking when she glanced down. "Do you still want this? No greeting, no pressure, just a question." Her pulse spiked. She typed slowly, deliberately. "Yes." The reply came seconds later. "Come tonight. 8. An address followed. Her breath caught. She locked her phone and forced herself to stay present while Mark talked. Nodded through the rest of breakfast. Waved goodbye like nothing was different. The moment the door closed behind him, Sharon exhaled shakily. She called Min-hee. "I need you to listen," she said the moment Min-hee answered. "Okay," Min-hee replied cautiously. "What's going on?" Sharon sat on the edge of the couch, gripping her phone. "I'm seeing someone." Min-hee was quiet. "You already said that." "This is different," Sharon said. "He's complicated." "Complicated how?" Sharon closed her eyes. "He's my brother's boss." Silence. Then softly, "Say that again." "You heard me." Minhee's voice sharpened. Sharon, no, absolutely not. I know. Sharon whispered. I know. That's not just complicated, that's dangerous. I know. Then why are you still talking to him? Because he sees me, she thought. Because he makes me feel chosen. Because I already crossed the line. I can't explain it, Sharon said, but I'm going to see him tonight. Minhee exhaled slowly. Then promise me one thing. What? That you don't lie to yourself about what this is. Sharon swallowed. I won't. That evening, Sharon stood outside the building George had sent her, heart racing. The place was quiet, discreet, private. When the door opened, George stood there, composed as ever, but his eyes told a different story. You came, he said. Yes. He stepped aside to let her in. The apartment was dim, understated. No unnecessary details. Everything felt intentional. So, Sharon said, trying to steady her voice. This is your terms? Yes, George replied. And I need to be clear about them. She nodded. This doesn't touch your brother, he said. Ever. Her chest tightened. Thank you. And if you want out, he continued, you say so. Once. She frowned. Once. If you stay, he said quietly. I won't pretend this is casual. Her pulse thudded. Neither will I. Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. George stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that she felt the heat of him. You're sure? He asked. Yes. That was all the permission he needed. He lifted his hand, cupping her face gently, but decisively. The touch sent a shiver through her. His thumb brushed along her jaw, not hurried, not hesitant. When he kissed her, it wasn't rushed. It was controlled, deep, intentional. Her breath caught as she leaned into him, her hands gripping his shirt like an anchor. The kiss wasn't frantic. It was claiming. When he pulled back, their foreheads rested together. This changes things, he murmured. I know, she whispered. He didn't stop. He kissed her again, this time harder, like restraint had finally snapped. Her back hit the wall gently. His hand braced beside her head, not trapping, just present. She felt dizzy, wanted, terrified. He broke the kiss suddenly, breathing heavy. That's all, he said. Her eyes flew open. What? That's all for tonight. Confusion and frustration flared. I said I wouldn't rush this, he replied. Fast doesn't mean careless. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. You're leaving me like this. A corner of his mouth lifted. Yes. She hated that it made her want him more. George stepped back, giving her space. Go home. She stared at him, pulse still racing. Then she nodded and left before she could change her mind. At home, Sharon lay in bed, body buzzing, replaying every second. The guilt was still there, but now it was tangled with satisfaction. She hadn't been forced, she had chosen. Across the city, George stood alone in his apartment, hand braced against the counter, breathing hard. He had crossed the line, and he knew he wouldn't stop now. If this story has you holding your breath, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Because what comes next isn't tension anymore, it's consequence. The days that followed were the most dangerous kind of calm. Sharon moved through her routine like nothing had changed. She woke early, made breakfast with Mark, listened to him talk about work, nodded at the right moments. On the surface, she was the same sister, the same woman. Inside, everything was different. George didn't text constantly. That was what unsettled her the most. When he reached out, it was brief, direct. Tonight. Are you free? Come. Each message sent a rush through her body that she hated and craved all at once. Their second night together erased the illusion that the first had been restraint. George didn't waste time pretending anymore. When she stepped into his apartment, he didn't ask questions. He pulled her into him, mouth finding hers with a hunger that stole her breath. "This doesn't get easier," he murmured against her lips. "I don't want it to," she whispered back. That night, he touched her like a man who had been denying himself too long. Controlled, deliberate, but unmistakably possessive. He didn't rush. He didn't apologize. When it was over, Sharon lay against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, her guilt softened by the warmth of his arms. She left before dawn. Back home, Mark barely noticed the change, except the way Sharon seemed distracted, quieter. He joked about it, teased her for being secretive. "You got a boyfriend or something?" he asked one morning, laughing. Her heart stuttered. "No," she said too quickly. He shrugged. "Just asking." At work, Mark's life continued to improve. Another bonus, more responsibility, praise from supervisors who had barely noticed him before. "Man, my boss has been different lately," Mark said one night. "Not warmer exactly, just invested." Sharon smiled weakly. "That's good, right?" "Yeah," Mark said. "Really good." She excused herself to the bathroom and locked the door, gripping the sink as the weight of it pressed down on her. She texted George later that night. "My brother knows something's different." The reply came fast. He knows he's valued. That's all he needs to know. It should have reassured her. Instead, it made her shiver. Minhee noticed the changes too. "You look satisfied," she said one afternoon, eyes narrowing. "And terrified." Sharon didn't deny it. "He's not going to stop, is he?" Minhee asked. "No," Sharon admitted quietly. "Neither am I." Minhee shook her head. "Just don't disappear into him." Sharon wanted to promise. She couldn't. George became more present, more demanding, not in words, but in expectation. He didn't like unanswered messages. He noticed what Sharon wore, what time she arrived, when she left. "You belong here," he said one night, pulling her closer. "Don't forget that." She should have bristled. Instead, she melted. But the danger sharpened the longer it went on. One evening, Sharon arrived home to find Mark sitting at the kitchen table, unusually quiet. "You okay?" she asked carefully. "Yeah," he said slowly. "Just work stuff." Her stomach tightened. "What kind of work stuff?" He hesitated. "My boss asked me about you today." Her breath caught. "About me." "Nothing weird," Mark added quickly. "Just asked how you were settling in. Said family stability matters." Sharon forced a laugh. "That's thoughtful." Mark nodded, still studying her. "Yeah, just unexpected." That night, Sharon confronted George the moment she stepped into his apartment. "You talked to my brother about me," she said. George didn't deny it. "I asked about you. You said you wouldn't involve him." "I didn't," he replied calmly. "I was careful." "That's not the same thing," she snapped. George stepped closer, his presence steadying and infuriating all at once. "I won't hurt him," he said, "but I won't pretend you don't exist either." She swallowed hard. "You're changing things." "Yes," he agreed. "I am." His hand slid to her waist, grounding her even as fear sparked. "You can still walk away," he said softly. She knew it was a lie. She pressed her forehead to his chest instead. "I don't want to." George closed his eyes briefly, like a man accepting something inevitable. "This won't end." "Quietly," he warned. "I know," she whispered. And still, she stayed. If you're still watching, still feeling the tension, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. The closer they get, the harder the fall will be. The first real crack appeared on a Thursday night. Sharon felt it the moment she stepped into the apartment. Mark wasn't on the couch like usual. He was standing by the kitchen counter, phone in hand, pacing slowly like he was working something out in his head. He looked up when she closed the door, his expression unreadable. "You're late," he said. Her heart stuttered. "I texted you." "You said you were with Minhee," he replied evenly. "She called me 10 minutes ago." The air shifted. "She did?" Sharon asked, keeping her voice steady with effort. "Yeah," Mark said. "She said she hadn't seen you all day." Sharon exhaled softly, forcing a shrug. "I ran into her earlier. Guess wires crossed." Mark nodded once, but he didn't look satisfied. "You've been out a lot lately," he said. The words weren't sharp, but they were pointed. "I'm an adult," Sharon replied carefully. "I can come and go." "I know," Mark said quickly. "I'm not trying to control you." She almost laughed at that. "I just worry," he added. "You moved in with me because things were unstable. Now you're barely here." Guilt hit her hard and sudden. "I'm okay," she said quietly. "I promise." Mark studied her face for a long moment, like he was trying to recognize something that had shifted. "Okay," he said at last. But the doubt didn't leave his eyes. That night, Sharon lay awake long after the apartment went quiet. Her phone rested on her chest, screen dark, her thoughts racing. George hadn't messaged her all day. The absence felt deliberate. She typed, erased, typed again. "Are we okay?" The reply came minutes later. "Come over." No reassurance, no softening. She slipped out quietly, heart hammering as she descended the stairs. The black car was already waiting. George didn't speak when she got in. The drive was silent. The moment the door closed behind them in his apartment, he turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Your brother mentioned you today." The words landed like a stone in her chest. "What?" she asked. "He wasn't suspicious," George continued calmly. "Just observant." Sharon swallowed. "That doesn't make it better." "It wasn't meant to," he replied. "It was meant to keep us careful." Fear crawled up her spine. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." George stepped closer, his presence steady, grounding, dangerous. "I told you this wouldn't stay theoretical," he said. "You can't be invisible forever." She crossed her arms tightly. "You said you wouldn't involve him." "I haven't," George replied, "but he exists. Ignoring that would be careless." She looked away, jaw tight. "You're changing things." "Yes," he said simply, "because things have changed." His hand came to rest lightly at her waist. Not pulling, not trapping, just there. "You still have a choice," he said quietly. She laughed bitterly. "Do I?" He didn't answer. Later, tangled in sheets, Sharon stared at the ceiling, her body warm, her mind racing. This felt different now. He felt different, more present, more certain. The next morning, Mark dropped news that made her blood run cold. "My boss invited me to dinner," he said casually over coffee. Her hand froze mid-stir. "Dinner?" "Yeah," Mark said. "Said he wants to talk about long-term plans, promotions, growth." Her chest tightened. "That's great." "Yeah," he said, smiling. "He even said you should come." The room tilted. "Me?" He said family matters, Mark added. "Wants to meet you properly." Her phone buzzed on the counter. "George, we need to talk. Now." That evening, George didn't soften it. "This dinner is unavoidable," he said. "Refusing would raise questions." "I don't want to sit across from him pretending nothing's happening," Sharon said. "You won't pretend," George replied. "You'll be careful." "That's not the same thing." "No," he agreed, "but it's safer." She ran a hand through her hair. "If he senses anything." "He won't," George said firmly. "Not if we control the narrative." The phrase unsettled her. "And if I can't do this?" she asked. George stepped closer, lowering his voice. Then tell me now. She opened her mouth, closed it. He brushed his thumb along her jaw, a familiar, intimate gesture that made her knees weak. You're already in this, he said quietly. She hated how true it felt. That night, Min-hee caught her outside the building. You're disappearing, Min-hee said, and I don't like it. I'm here, Sharon replied weakly. No, Min-hee said. You're orbiting someone. Sharon looked away. This ends badly, Min-hee warned. Everything ends, Sharon replied. Min-hee's voice softened. Just make sure it's worth it. Sharon didn't answer. The dinner loomed over her like a countdown. And if you're feeling this tension tightening right now, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Because the next part is where masks slip and mistakes become visible. Later that night, George stood alone, adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror. He wasn't worried about Mark. He was worried about himself. Because the closer this got to the open, the less willing he was to let Sharon go. The restaurant was already half full when they arrived. Soft lighting, low music, the kind of place where conversations blended together and nothing felt private, even when it was meant to be. Sharon felt exposed the moment she stepped. Inside, like every secret she carried, was visible on her face. Mark was relaxed, excited even. He straightened his jacket, glanced around with a small smile. Nice place, he said. Didn't know he liked spots like this. Sharon forced a nod. Neither did I. Across the room, George Kim stood as they approached. He looked exactly as he always did. Composed, polished, in control. Nothing about him suggested secrecy or scandal. If Sharon hadn't known better, she would have believed he was just a boss taking his employee to dinner. His eyes met hers for half a second. Nothing lingered. Nothing gave them away. Mark, George said, extending his hand. Good to see you. Mark shook it enthusiastically. Thank you for the invite, sir. I really appreciate it. Please, George replied smoothly. Call me George. Then he turned to Sharon. And you must be Sharon. The use of her name, spoken out loud in public with no edge or intimacy, sent a strange shiver through her. Yes, she said. Nice to meet you. A lie wrapped in perfect manners. They sat. George positioned himself across from Mark, Sharon at his side, close enough that she could feel his presence without looking at him. Close enough that every movement felt intentional. Conversation flowed easily at first. Work, projects, opportunities. Mark was animated, proud, completely unaware of the current running beneath the table. George was careful. He praised Mark's work without overdoing it. He spoke about growth and responsibility, about trust. Consistency matters, George said calmly. People who show up are noticed. Mark beamed. I'm grateful for the chance. You earned it, George replied. Sharon watched the exchange with tight control, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Every so often, she felt George's knee brush against hers. Accidental to anyone watching, not to her. Her phone buzzed softly in her purse. She ignored it. Dessert menus arrived. Mark excused himself to take a call outside. The moment he was gone, the air shifted. George didn't look at Sharon when he spoke. Breathe, he said quietly. Her chest tightened. You don't get to tell me that. You're holding yourself too tightly, he replied. You'll draw attention. She swallowed. This was a mistake. Yes, he said, but it's a manageable one. She turned to him then, eyes flashing. You're enjoying this. His gaze flicked to hers briefly. I'm enduring it. She almost laughed. Under the table, his hand moved, resting lightly against her thigh, still, grounding. The contact was subtle, invisible. Her breath hitched. Don't, she whispered. I'm not doing anything, he replied calmly. And that was the worst part. He wasn't. Mark returned moments later, oblivious, and the spell broke. George withdrew his hand like nothing had happened. The rest of dinner passed in controlled politeness. Sharon answered questions about herself carefully, keeping everything surface level. George watched her closely, not possessively, but attentively. When the check came, George stood. "My pleasure," he said. "It was good to finally meet you, Sharon." She smiled politely. "Likewise." Outside, Mark clapped his hands together. "That went great, right?" "Yes," Sharon said softly. George nodded. "It did." As they parted ways, George didn't touch her, didn't look back. That night, Sharon lay awake again, the dinner replaying in her mind. The closeness, the restraint, the danger. Her phone buzzed just after midnight. "You handled that well." She stared at the message. "I hated every second," she typed back. The reply came quickly. "I know." "Then why do I feel like you won?" she sent. A pause. Then, "Because you stayed." Her chest tightened. The days after the dinner were heavier. The stakes felt higher. Sharon caught Mark watching her more closely, asking small questions, noticing patterns. George was quieter, more deliberate. When he saw her, it was brief, controlled, until it wasn't. One night she arrived at his apartment tense and exhausted. "You're pulling away," she said the moment the door closed. "Yes," he replied. "Why?" "Because if I don't," he said calmly, "I'll stop pretending I care about the fallout." The honesty scared her. She stepped closer anyway. "I don't want to be a secret you manage." His jaw tightened. "Then don't be." "Then what am I?" she asked. George reached for her, his grip firm but not rough. "You're a risk I'm choosing." Her breath caught. "I won't lie to you," he continued. "This will cost something." She nodded. "I know, but I won't hide you," he said. "Not from myself." That night, the intimacy between them was different. Less tentative, more certain, not rushed, but undeniable. Afterward, Sharon lay awake beside him, the weight of everything pressing in. "This can't go on like this forever," she whispered. George looked down at her. "No," he agreed. "Something will give." She didn't ask what. At home, Min-hee watched her closely the next day. "You look like someone who's about to lose something," Min-hee said. Sharon swallowed. "Or gain it." Min-hee shook her head. "Those are usually the same thing." That evening, Mark came home later than usual. "George asked me to travel next month," he said casually. "Big opportunity." Sharon's stomach dropped. Travel meant distance. Distance meant exposure. Her phone buzzed. "George." "We're reaching the point where this changes." Her fingers trembled. "How?" she typed. The reply was slow this time. "Soon you won't be able to pretend you're just his sister." Her chest tightened painfully. "If you're still here, still holding your breath, like this, video and subscribe. Because the next part is where everything starts to unravel." George stood by his window again, city lights reflecting off the glass. He had always controlled the board. This time, the move ahead of him scared even him. The tension stopped pretending after the dinner. Sharon felt it everywhere now, in the way Mark watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, in the way his questions lingered a second too long before he laughed them off. "You've been distracted lately," Mark said one evening, as they stood in the kitchen, rinsing plates side by side. Her shoulders stiffened. "I've just been tired." He nodded slowly. "You say that a lot." The comment wasn't accusatory. That made it worse. "You know you can talk to me, right?" he added. "About anything." "I know," Sharon said softly. She didn't. That night she went to George with the unease sitting heavy in her chest. They didn't touch when she arrived. That alone told her something had shifted. "He's paying attention," she said quietly. George didn't deny it. "He's observant." "This isn't sustainable," Sharon whispered. "No," George agreed, "which means we stop pretending this is temporary." Her heart thudded. "What are you saying?" George studied her for a moment, his expression measured. "I'm saying you decide," he said. "Soon." Fear flared. "Decide what?" "Whether you want this to stay hidden forever," he replied, "or whether you want a life where I'm not erased." Her chest tightened. "You said you wouldn't expose this." "I said I wouldn't hurt him," George corrected calmly. The distinction made her breath catch. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," he said quietly, "I won't keep living in the shadows." She shook her head. "You're asking me to choose between you and my brother." "I'm asking you to stop pretending those worlds don't overlap," he replied. Silence pressed in. "I need time," Sharon said. George nodded once. "You have until tomorrow." Tomorrow felt like a countdown. That night, Sharon finally told Minhee everything. The mistake, the messages, the silence, the dinners, the way control had crept in, without ever being demanded. Minhee listened, arms folded, eyes sharp but kind. "He's dangerous," Minhee said finally. "I know," Sharon whispered. "Not because he's cruel," Minhee continued, "but because he's strategic, and because he's already rearranging the world to fit you." Sharon swallowed hard. "I don't feel trapped. I believe you," Minhee said gently. "That's the problem." The next morning, Mark walked into the apartment looking energized. "Remember that work trip I told you about?" he said, pouring coffee. Sharon's stomach tightened. "Yeah, well, it's turning into more than a trip," Mark continued, smiling. "They want me on site for a few months. Temporary assignment, bigger responsibility." Her hand stilled around her mug. "How long?" she asked carefully. 3 months, Mark said. "Out of state." Her chest tightened. "That's fast," she managed. "I know," he said. "But George says opportunities like this don't come twice. Says it'll position me for promotion when I get back." George. The name felt heavier than it ever had before. After Mark left, her phone buzzed. "George. This changes things." Her fingers trembled as she typed. "You knew this would happen." A pause. Then, "I prepared for possibilities." Anger flared, sharp and sudden. "You're creating distance. I'm creating opportunity," he replied. "For him, and for us." Her chest ached. "This feels like control." The pause this time was longer. Then, "It is." The honesty sent a shiver through her. That night, Sharon went to him with resolve, burning through fear. George opened the door and didn't speak. He didn't need to. "You did this," she said. "You moved the pieces." "I didn't force him," George replied. "I opened a door." Her voice shook. "So now what?" George stepped closer, his presence steady, grounding. "Now there are fewer lies," he said. She searched his face. "And the truth." He cupped her face gently, deliberately. "The truth is I won't give you back to a life that pretends I don't exist." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I," he admitted. She nodded once, a decision settling deep in her chest. "Then stop pretending this isn't real," she said. George pulled her into him, holding her without restraint this time. Outside, the city went on, unaware that a line had been crossed that could not be undone. And if you're still here, still feeling your heart race, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because the final chapter decides everything. Mark left the following Monday. Sharon hugged him at the door longer than usual, her arms tight around him, her face pressed to his shoulder. He laughed, slightly awkward, but didn't pull away. "You'll be fine," he said. It's just 3 months. I know, she murmured. He stepped back and looked at her closely. You good? She nodded. Yeah. He studied her for a second longer, like he almost saw something else there, something he couldn't quite name. Call me, he said. I will. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt hollow. That night, Sharon stood in George's apartment, the silence between them no longer charged with uncertainty, but with consequence. He's gone, she said quietly. George nodded. I know, she crossed her arms. This is the part where I ask what happens now. He looked at her for a long moment before answering. Now, he said, we stop pretending this is temporary. Her heart thudded. That's not comforting. No, he agreed. It's honest. She walked toward him slowly. You moved pieces without asking me. Yes. You decided things that affected my family. Yes. And you don't regret it. George didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was low. I regret that it was necessary. The truth of it hit her harder than denial would have. You crossed a line, she said. So did you, he replied gently. The first night you didn't walk away. She exhaled shakily. What if he finds out one day? He won't, George said. And if he ever does, it will be from you. Not rumors, not mistakes. That mattered more than she wanted to admit. I won't hide you, he continued. Not anymore. Her chest tightened. From who? From myself, he said. And from the future. The words settled into her bones. Days passed, then weeks. Without Mark in the apartment, Sharon felt exposed, but also strangely free. She didn't sneak anymore. She didn't invent excuses. George didn't soften, but he did change. He listened more. He asked questions. He stopped arranging things around her and started asking her opinion. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it shifted something. One evening, Sharon stood by the window in his apartment, city lights stretching endlessly below. I need to know something, she said. Ask. If I hadn't sent those photos, she continued, would this have happened anyway? George joined her, standing close but not touching. No, he said. The honesty surprised her. That mistake, he added, was the only opening. She nodded slowly. Then don't ever pretend this was fate. He met her gaze. I won't. It was choice. Her choice. His choice. Months later, Mark came back changed, more confident, more grounded. He hugged Sharon tightly when he returned, smiling wide. You should have seen it, he said. Everything I learned, everything I earned. She smiled back. I'm proud of you. He paused. I don't say this enough, but thanks for holding things down while I was gone. Guilt flickered, but it didn't consume her anymore. That night, Sharon stood alone on the balcony, phone in hand, staring at a message she hadn't sent yet. George stepped up behind her. You don't have to, he said softly. I know, she replied. But I want to, she typed. Mark's back. He's happy. The reply came moments later. That was always the point. She turned to George. You don't get to rewrite that. A corner of his mouth lifted. I wouldn't dare. They stood there in silence, no longer pretending they were anything other than what they were. Not innocent, not accidental, not clean, but honest and chosen. Life doesn't always reward the right choices. Sometimes it rewards the ones you commit to fully. And sometimes the most dangerous mistake you make becomes the life you decide to live. Final lesson. Every choice has a cost. The question isn't whether you'll pay it, but whether you're willing to own what you chose when the bill comes due. So let me ask you this. If you were Sharon, would you have walked away? Or would you have stayed, knowing everything it could cost you? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them all, And if this story kept you hooked till the end, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel with someone who loves intense, emotional, forbidden romance, because more stories like this are coming. And the next one might be even more dangerous.